Hello, welcome to my video. My name is Gino Felicetti. I hope you're all doing fantastic. Now, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Now, if you've come across this video via a QR code, that means that we've already met because this QR code is exclusive to overseas adventure travelers. So we've met during your stay here in Sicily. We met during the Mafia discussion. I hope you all enjoyed that. Now, this video instead serves as a supplement, if you like, to your learning process about the Mafia. And it's going to be a very, very difficult question to actually answer for you. The question is the origins of the Mafia, the origins of the Sicilian COSA Nostra. A very, very difficult question to answer, basically because there is very little or no written documentation regarding the origins of the Sicilian Mafia. So what are we left with? Well, we have to delve into a very, very complex social, cultural history of Sicily to get some kind of understanding. Now, the location for this video, well, my hometown, Corleone. As soon as I mention Corleone, I'm not going to get any prizes for the first image that's going to go through your mind. Probably associated with connotations with the Godfather trilogy, organized crime, Sicilian Mafia. Yes, I'm going to answer that question for you today too. Why Corleone became the epicenter of this massive organization. The timeline we're going to look at, that we're going to concentrate on, early 1800s to early 1900s. But before we do all of that, we need to trace the origins. We need to go to the core. We need to go to the nucleus of the origins of the Sicilian Mafia. And those origins lie in Sicily's geographical positioning, that favorable position in the center of the Mediterranean. Now, as you know, it's a favorable location. It has been since its existence, and it has led to a very, very long line of different foreign invaders. Many of these regimes were very despotic regimes too. Now, economically speaking, a very precious economical hub. That's why everyone wanted to control the island of Sicily, going up north to Northern Europe to export, import, down south to North Africa, east, west, an extremely valuable asset to actually have control of this island. And that's where we have to go back to the origins of the Sicilian Mafia, to Sicily's geographical positioning. Now, if we look just before that period, before the unification of Italy, before Sicily, the annexation of Sicily, that was 1860. Before that, we had the Bourbon rule. Now, feudalism was rife, as it was in many regimes, and most of the land actually belonged to nobility or the church. That's who possessed most of the land. Now, we started to see the first changes in 1812 because primogeniture was actually banned. What was that? Well, that is where the firstborn inherits the estates of the parents. And so that was leading to the nobility and the church to actually sell off pockets of land to the peasantry. Now, the unification of Italy, 1860, accelerated this passage, this transitional passage from feudalism to capitalism. It was where the whole anthropology of Sicily changed. Can you imagine? It was a massive societal change. Now we were seeing an increase in landowners, a sharp increase in landowners. Now, what was left of the land of the nobility and the church? Well, that was seized by the government, and that was actually divided up into small plots and then sold off to the peasantry. So we had a massive increase in landowners, and that needed to be policed. And that was where the government was stretched with its resources, and they didn't actually have a capable police force to actually police all of this land. Remember, new laws were in. These laws were not being obeyed. Again, we're going back to that distrust of a government. Okay, going back to the previous regimes, the draconian regimes beforehand, they were installing fear and trepidation within the populace, and the populace was not trusting at all the governments. And that was actually still happening during that actual period. Uprisings, civil wars, you can imagine what was happening. After civil wars and uprisings, the result, well, we have poverty. And that was leading to peasants actually stealing from the land just to basically keep alive. Now, the nobility and the church, they had the economical resources to actually police their land. So they were actually installing the actual presence of small armies. Now, these armies were actually protecting their land, but the smaller landowners didn't have the economical resources to actually do that. Now, these armies, who were they? Well, they were basically thugs, but they had levels of violence that was difficult to actually comprehend. It was drawn from the past draconian regimes. They had a level of violence, as I said, that was unthinkable. It was like the Taliban today, or in its past. That's how we can actually compare it. Now, they were extremely violent. They were now forcing concessions. They were now forcing the smaller landowners to actually pay for protection. They were now taking hold of the lands that they were actually paid to protect, the nobility and the church. They now wanted to become heavily involved in businesses. Now, the main businesses were exportation, grain, the lemons. Lemons were extremely lucrative. Over 3 million cases of lemons were actually transported to the States. That's the kind of lucrative operations that were going on. They wanted to be part of all of this. They were actually taking hold and commanding the actual trading routes. They were becoming extremely powerful. And this is where they started to form their organization in a systematic manner. It was like a military operation. They had foot soldiers. They had political connections now. They were paying off the police. Their brutal force was giving them their actual dominance. And this is where the Cosa Nostra actually formed. It's not a monolithic, or wasn't a monolithic organization. There were political connections actually with the church too. They were that powerful, paying off the police. So they were basically filling a void that was missing from the Italian government then. The Italian government didn't have the resources. They were seeing this island on its own. They weren't going to go in and sort out the problems. Now, this organization became extremely powerful indeed. Now, a question that needs answering to is Corleone. Why did Corleone become the epicenter of this massive organization? It basically became the epicenter because back in the Roman days, Corleone was renowned for, as the Romans were always on the hunt for grain. The Greeks, instead, they were into the vineyards. The Romans were into the grain, and they were looking for the best possible grain to actually export. And they found that in the Corleonese territory. The Corleonese territory is vast, and Corleone's geographical siting, again, it's favorably sited. It's in the middle between Palermo to the north and Agrigento to the south. If you look at a map of Sicily, you'll see that Corleone is geographically sited 60 kilometers south of Palermo, 60 kilometers north of Agrigento. Two major trading ports. Now, the Romans were so impressed with the grain in the Corleonese area that they actually built two trading routes. Now, those trading routes were very lucrative indeed. They were actually exporting grain from Palermo up north, up to the south of France and down south to North Africa. Now, this is where the Cosa Nostra actually took hold of these trading routes. Corleone was a very rich trading route indeed. Now, remember, the Cosa Nostra was concentrated more in western Sicily. That's where it was concentrated. Many different groups were actually emerging with the same structure. However, Corleone was the most powerful of all of these, and so the Corleonese Cosa Nostra took over. What did that mean? It meant basically that whoever was the head, was the number one of the Corleonese Cosa Nostra, was actually heading the Sicilian Mafia per se. So when you talk about Sicilian Mafia, at the head was the Corleonese Cosa Nostra. They were at the head of the organization itself. Now, can you see where I'm actually leading? For example, a throwback to the violent nature of many of the regimes. That's where the violence came in. It's rubbed off on the populace, all these different regimes, for good or for bad. It's rubbed off on the populace. It's in the DNA, this mixture. And that's where we have to go back. This distrust in governments, it's still there today. And that's where we go back to the formation of the Sicilian Mafia, the Sicilian Cosa Nostra. Nowadays, it's very, very different. The Cosa Nostra broke down basically those rules and regulations, the forms of retribution that they actually had, and it just went into organized crime. But their thuggery, their outright violent nature that came from past regimes, draconian past regimes, that's what led to their actual dominance. We look around terrorist organizations in our history, like the Taliban that I mentioned before, and they're in power through brute force. It's a void that's left by the government. And that is how the Cosa Nostra actually evolved here in Sicily. It's an intriguing topic, it really is. Now, as I said, there's very, very little to actually read, but a book that will actually capture your attention is Midnight in Sicily. I've actually put it onto the reading list of overseas adventure travel and Grand Circle travel. It's by an Australian author, Peter Robb, R-O-B-B. Please do give that a read. Now, I hope in some way this short video has given you some answers to that very, very deep-rooted question about why did this all come about in some way. We look at other organizations around the world, terrorist organizations and other organizations, and they have a similar pattern, that similar trait to them. And it's an intriguing topic, it really is today. Today, well, it's organized crime. We have that distrust in the government. It's still there, but it's incredible to think that Sicily's geographical positioning in the Mediterranean, that favorable position which should have been a positive. It was during many, many regimes, during the golden years of the Norman regime, for example. It was during that period, and it could still be. Can you imagine Sicily being an international hub for many, many airlines? But it's not there because organized crime is still there. It's more a mentality than anything else, a distrust in actually doing things. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed your stay in Sicily. It's a fascinating, fascinating island. It really is. Fascinating people too. I hope you enjoyed the Mafia discussion. I hope this in some ways answered some questions for you. Any comments, any feedback, please do let me know in the comments below. And if there's anything I could be helpful with, please let me know, and I'm always here at your disposal to actually give you as much information as possible. In the meantime, take care, and hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.